I thought I was alone. At least, that's what I kept telling myself as I trudged deeper into the woods. The kind of woods that seem harmless in daylight, with birds chirping and squirrels squabbling. But in the dark, they have teeth, or eyes, or something far worse that waits silently, feeding off your doubt. That night, the air was so thick it felt like it had weight, pressing against my chest with each step. And then I heard it, whispering my name, not from a distance, but close, almost beneath my skin. "You shouldn't be here," it hissed. Yet the sound was laughably casual, like a neighbor complaining about the trash cans left out too long. I froze, heart hammering, half expecting my rational mind to save me. It didn't. The whisper came again, closer, a mocking intimacy that made every instinct scream. Run. I did, eventually, but not before catching a glimpse of something hunched in the shadows, watching me with eyes that burned colder than the night itself. And that, dear listener, was only the beginning. What I survived was horrifying, but the woods have no loyalty. And the stories you're about to hear, they make my experience look like a picnic. Keep your flashlight close. You're going to need it. If you've ever driven down a road so narrow that the trees practically brush against your windows, or hiked through a forest where your footsteps are the only sound for miles, then you already know the strange kind of unease these places carry. There's a rhythm to the wilderness that seems perfectly calm until it isn't. In the daylight, these woods are charming. Sunlight spilling through the leaves, the smell of damp earth, birds singing like nothing could possibly go wrong. But once the sun dips below the horizon, the charm dies. Shadows stretch unnaturally. Sounds become unpredictable. And that sense of being watched? It's not paranoia. Not always. Most people don't talk about it. They laugh nervously, shake it off as imagination, or blame raccoons for that weird rustling outside the campsite. But anyone who's spent a night alone in the middle of nowhere knows better. There are rules here, whether you want to follow them or not. Respect the isolation. Don't ignore sudden silence. And for the love of common sense, never underestimate the things that hide just beyond the beam of your flashlight. I've been lucky or unlucky, depending on how you look at it. I felt eyes on me where there shouldn't have been any, heard sounds that made my skin crawl, and experienced the kind of quiet that screams louder than any city street. And yet, I keep going back. Why? Because the stories I'm about to share, they're not just tales. They're warnings, real warnings from places most people drive past without a second thought. So, if you've ever felt that shiver in the back of your neck when alone on a dark road, or glimpsed something that shouldn't exist in the trees, comment below, share it. Because in these woods, you're never truly alone, and underestimating them is the fastest way to regret it. Travelers, hikers, and late-night wanderers, take note. The first story you're about to hear? It's the perfect example of what happens when someone assumes nothing's out there. The first time it happened, I was hitchhiking along a back road that even Google Maps treated like a suggestion rather than a real path. A truck pulled over, a big, rusted thing that groaned when the door opened. The driver didn't smile. He just nodded and said, "You shouldn't be here." I laughed nervously. "I know, right?" I said, climbing in. But his eyes didn't move. He kept staring at the rearview mirror like he was watching someone or something behind me. Then he leaned in and whispered, "They know you're coming." I didn't know what to say, so I just stared out of the window, watching the trees blur past as my stomach turned. When I looked back, the truck had disappeared. Just gone. No skid marks, no exit ramp, nothing. Another night, I was camping alone near an old trail that wound through the thickest part of the forest. Around midnight, I heard footsteps circling my tent. "Hello?" I called, trying to keep my voice steady. No answer. Then a voice, calm and low, said, "Don't move." I froze. "Who's there?" I whispered. A laugh, soft but hollow, and the words, "You should have stayed home." When I unzipped the tent a crack, there was nobody, only footprints. Too large to be mine, too deliberate to belong to any animal I knew. Leading into the shadows. The strangest one came last summer while hiking a trail I'd done 100 times. Out of nowhere, a man appeared, leaning casually against a tree. He was dressed like he'd stepped out of a 1950s photograph. "Lost?" he asked, smiling too widely. I hesitated. "No, I'm fine." He tilted his head. "Funny. You never really are." Then he disappeared in the blink of an eye. No path, no trees disturbed, nothing. Just the faint scent of old tobacco and something else, something metallic. By the time I stumbled back to the main road, my nerves shredded. I couldn't stop thinking about him. And that's when I realized the trail I'd taken was supposed to be closed for maintenance. How he got there, and why he seemed to know exactly where I was going, I'll never know. These encounters might sound improbable, or maybe like bad timing. But trust me, in the middle of nowhere, strangers aren't always human, and they never forget who's wandering where they shouldn't. It started as a quiet evening, the kind that tricks you into thinking the forest is harmless. The sun was dipping low, painting the treetops gold, birds singing their final songs. I breathed in the crisp air, telling myself this was peaceful, safe. I was wrong. The first sign was a rustling behind me. Soft at first, like wind through leaves. I turned. Nothing. Just shadows dancing over the undergrowth. I laughed nervously, shaking my head. "You're just jumpy," I muttered. But then I heard it. Low, guttural, and undeniably alive. A sound that didn't belong to any animal I'd ever known. And then the eyes appeared. Two of them, glowing faintly through the thinning light, reflecting a feral intelligence I wasn't meant to see. I froze. My instincts screamed to run, but my legs betrayed me. The creature stepped forward, tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that bent in ways they shouldn't. Its mouth opened, a crack in the darkness, and a hiss that felt like ice crawling down my spine escaped. I stumbled back, tripping over roots, my flashlight bouncing wildly, illuminating only fragments of its shape. Every time I tried to focus, it seemed to vanish, only to appear closer. I remember thinking, in some grim, absurd way, that the forest itself had betrayed me. This wasn't just an animal. It was something older, patient, waiting for someone like me to wander alone. I ran, branches clawing at my clothes, heart hammering, never daring to look back. But the sounds followed. Soft steps, low growls, the rustle of leaves that whispered my name. I eventually broke through the tree line and collapsed on the side of the road, gasping. Safe. Hardly. Safe is a word that doesn't exist out here. Not after dark. Locals never speak of what prowls after dark. And now, I understood why. Some things in the woods don't just watch. They remember. And while I escaped that night, others weren't so lucky. Some disappear quietly, leaving only whispers behind. Hints that the forest collects more than memories, and that curiosity here has a price far higher than most can imagine. The path I took, I don't think anyone else should ever take. It started innocently enough. A narrow trail branching off the main path. Dappled sunlight on moss and leaves. The scent of pine sharp in the air. I thought I was being adventurous. I thought I had control. I was wrong. Hours passed. The sun dipped lower, turning the woods from gold to gray, shadows stretching into shapes my mind couldn't identify. Every tree seemed to lean closer. Every rustle of leaves, a whisper I couldn't ignore. Birds vanished. Insects fell silent. And then the snapping, small, deliberate, like someone stepping just behind me, but always out of sight. I tried to retrace my steps. The landmarks were gone. Trees that should have been familiar now seemed foreign. Their trunks twisted in ways that made no sense. I called out, voice cracking. No answer. Just the wind, or something else, carrying a faint echo of my own name. My heartbeat thumped in my ears, drowning out everything else. I stumbled through thick brush, my hands scratching on branches, my knees soaked in mud. Every time I paused, I thought I heard breathing. Not mine. A low, deliberate, measured breath, as if the forest itself was exhaling and watching. I began to question everything. Had I actually left the main trail? Or had it never been there? Hours blurred. Stars emerged, pinpricks in a black canvas. And somewhere, always just beyond the edge of my flashlight, movement. Shadows that weren't mine. Eyes that caught the faintest reflection of light. Vanishing before I could focus. Panic set in. I screamed. No response. Only the whispering, mocking wind, reminding me I was alone. Truly, utterly alone. Eventually, I found the road again, or something like it. Broken asphalt running into nothing. Relief surged, but the sense of being observed never left, because in the middle of nowhere, the woods remember. They know who wanders off the path, who thinks they're clever enough to navigate on instinct alone, and they don't forgive mistakes. For some, getting lost ends quietly, with a faint story told around a campfire. For others, it escalates, and that's where the real horror begins. When being lost collides with something far more sinister than confusion. I'd been driving for hours, alone on a road so empty, it felt like the world had forgotten it existed. My headlights cut through the night, illuminating nothing but trees and black asphalt stretching endlessly ahead. That's when it happened. My car shuddered, coughed, and died. Dead. Not a sputter, not a warning. Just silence. I cursed, banging the steering wheel, heart hammering. Perfect, I muttered. Just perfect. I tried the phone. No signal. Of course. The kind of road you only see in survival guides or bad horror movies. And then I saw him. A figure standing at the edge of the trees, thumb raised. The classic hitchhiker pose. My rational mind screamed, "Don't." But loneliness and fear blurred judgment. "Hey, here," I called, rolling the window down a crack. He stepped forward, face shadowed. "Car trouble?" he asked. His voice was calm, almost casual, but there was something off. "Yeah," I said, swallowing. "Battery's dead. You need a ride?" He smiled, and I swear the streetlight flickered as he did. "Sure," he said. "Hop in." I hesitated, the hairs on my arms standing up. There was no shoulder, no houses, nothing but black forest on either side. And yet, I did it. The second he entered, the car seemed heavier, slower. The engine refused to turn over. And then he leaned back, eyes catching the dim light, unnervingly familiar. "You know, some people never leave roads like this," he said, voice too knowing, almost amused. My stomach dropped. "What? What do you mean?" I asked. He didn't answer, just smiled wider, and for a moment I thought he wasn't entirely human. I drove again. I forced it. But the feeling never left. That night, I swore I saw other figures at the roadside. Shadows watching, waiting. Some vanished when I blinked. Others lingered like they were studying me. And I kept thinking, how many drivers stop for strangers in the middle of nowhere and never return the same? Would you have stopped? Would you have taken the chance? Or is it better to stay in the car, headlights cutting through the night, praying that whatever waits in the darkness doesn't decide tonight is your night? Out here, the rules aren't written by man. They're written by the things that move between the headlights and the tree line. Things that thrive when the world thinks it's safe. Because once the road ends, the line between natural and unnatural blurs. And the night, it gets hungrier. We thought we were clever, seasoned campers with enough supplies to survive a week in the middle of nowhere. The cabin was tiny, rustic, and smelled faintly of mold and old pine. Perfect for a weekend getaway. Or so we thought. That first night, we sat around the fire, roasting marshmallows, telling stupid ghost stories. "Bet nothing out here could actually get us," my friend joked, tossing a stick into the flames. We laughed. But in the woods, laughter carries further than you think. Around midnight, the forest went unnervingly silent. Even the crickets seemed to hold their breath. I was the first to notice movement near the tree line. Something shifting just beyond the firelight. "Probably a deer," I said, hoping my voice sounded steadier than it felt. But the shadow didn't act like a deer. It lurked, crouching, then straightening in ways no animal should. My friends laughed nervously, brushing it off, until the shadow stepped closer and its limbs twisted at impossible angles, as if mocking our laughter. One of my friends whispered, "Did it just look at us?" And I realized it wasn't moving like a normal being at all. It tilted, crouched, disappeared behind a tree, then reappeared closer. My heart raced, and for a brief, absurd moment, I thought, maybe it's a trick of the firelight. But then it blinked, or something blinked, and the grin I saw, it was human-shaped and all wrong. We had ignored the old warnings. Locals told stories of a rule most campers laugh off: never leave the fire unattended, never wander beyond the cleared area, and never, under any circumstances, light a candle in the cabin after dark. We did all three, and for a moment it seemed like the forest was laughing with us. Before the laughter stopped and we realized we weren't alone, by the time dawn came, we were shaken, sleep deprived, and a little too quiet. Nothing followed us back to the road. Or maybe it did, and we just didn't notice. But the memory of that night, the shifting shadows, the impossible movements, the sense that the forest itself disapproved, stuck with me. And I'll tell you this: the woods remember. They keep track of who respects their rules and who doesn't. As we walked away from the cabin, each step felt heavier, every rustle of leaves a warning. And what we survived that night was tame compared to the encounters that come from wandering too far, trusting too much, or thinking the night is nothing more than quiet and shadows. Some stories in these woods, they don't just scare you, they get under your skin and never leave. I wasn't sure if it was real, and I'm still not. It began innocuously, a soft whisper that seemed to float through the trees, distant at first, like the wind brushing over leaves. But then it got closer, more insistent, murmuring words I couldn't understand, yet felt in every bone. "Stop," it said. "Go back." I told myself it was exhaustion, paranoia, maybe the stress of being alone in the middle of nowhere. That explanation didn't last long. I found a small cabin tucked behind a thicket of trees, its windows dark, its door slightly ajar. Inside, there was a journal, old and smelling of mildew, left open on a table, as if someone had just stepped away. The words were cryptic, fragmented. They watch when you blink. They remember. Don't trust the shadows. My rational mind wanted to laugh, chalk it up to some prankster. But as I read, I could swear. The room's air thickened, the shadows in the corners stretching, leaning, almost waiting for me to finish. Sleep brought no relief. In my tent, I could hear breathing that didn't match my own, whispers circling me like smoke, forming words and then vanishing before they made sense. Sometimes I thought I glimpsed figures at the edge of my vision, familiar shapes warped into something impossible. I questioned everything. Did the journal exist before I found it? Or had I imagined it? Was the whispering real? Or just my mind unraveling under isolation? The forest seemed alive with intent, bending reality just enough to make every step uncertain. My flashlight flickered in patterns that weren't random. paths that should have led to safety looped back on themselves. And that's the cruelest part. In the middle of nowhere, you can't trust what your senses tell you. The trees, the wind, the creaking branches, they become collaborators in a game you didn't agree to play. Even now, when I think back, I remember the journal, the whispering, the fleeting shapes, and I'm unsure where the forest ended and my mind began. Some nights, I wonder if the woods remember me too, or if I'm still trapped in some cruel echo of that night. What I survived of this, I barely understand. And the next stories, they combine the terror of being hunted with the mind's own betrayals, leaving you unsure whether danger is outside or inside your own head. I thought I had seen the worst the woods could offer. Shadows, whispers, eyes that glowed with inhuman light. Nothing prepared me for this. I stumbled upon it by accident. A clearing bathed in moonlight, oddly serene, almost inviting. But then I heard the chants, low, rhythmic, impossibly precise. My stomach turned. I shouldn't have peeked, shouldn't have listened, but I did. They don't want anyone else to see. But I did, I whispered to myself, hiding behind a cluster of trees around a bonfire. Cloaked figures moved with deliberate, practiced gestures, chanting words that made the hair on my arms stand on end. One of them paused, looked toward my hiding spot, and I could swear I felt their gaze pierce through the darkness. "You shouldn't be here," I muttered, more to steady my own fear than to warn them. I crept closer, curiosity and terror warring inside me. One of the figures held a small, carved object. Wood twisted into a shape that didn't belong in this world. "It's forbidden," a voice hissed. Somewhere in my mind, or from the shadows I blinked. And suddenly, I was certain they were aware of me. But no one moved to stop me. They continued their ritual, their chant swelling like a living thing. The firelight cast grotesque dancing shapes across their faces. And I realized the horror wasn't the forest, not the darkness. It was the human mind, capable of horrors more calculated, more intimate than anything nature could produce. My foot snapped a twig, and one figure finally turned, head tilting unnaturally. My lungs screamed at me to run. Branches tore at my clothes, and I tumbled through the undergrowth, not daring to look back. The chanting faded, replaced by a silence that felt worse than noise. The kind of silence that suggests eyes are still following, waiting. Even now, I can't forget the details, the way they moved, the object, the chant that seemed to press against my skull. Some knowledge is meant to remain hidden. And this was one of those times the woods themselves seemed to shrug. almost complicit, allowing human evil to unfold like a dark flower in the night. And that night was a reminder. The most terrifying things aren't always the shadows or creatures. Sometimes it's the people we think are like us, and the secrets they guard in the middle of nowhere. The stories ahead escalate further, combining the physical, the psychological, and the unexplainable into a crescendo of fear you may never shake. By this point, I thought I'd seen everything the woods could throw at me. Shadows, whispers, creatures, cults. But some things don't want to be found, and some things never leave. One night, I returned to a trail I had hiked months earlier. Curious, foolish, or maybe drawn by something I can't explain. The path was empty, silent, but halfway through, I saw footprints. Not mine, not any human I recognized, leading off into the undergrowth. They were fresh, pressed deeply into the soil, as if something heavy had passed moments before. I followed, heart hammering, until the prints vanished near a copse of trees. No branches broken, no sign of escape, nothing. And yet, I felt eyes on me, watching, waiting. Another time, I found an old camper abandoned near a forgotten road. Everything inside was pristine, untouched, yet I knew it had been there for years. A notebook lay on the passenger seat, open to a blank page, except for one line scrawled in uneven letters. "You're next." I swear, I didn't write it. I didn't touch it. And yet, the air around me pressed down like the weight of 100 unseen hands. There were moments when I questioned my own mind. Was the forest bending reality? Or was I simply too aware, too exposed, too vulnerable? But the woods have a way of proving themselves. The creaks of branches, the fleeting shapes in peripheral vision, the distant whisper of your own name. It's enough to remind you that nothing is ever truly safe, and that the middle of nowhere has a memory, an intelligence, a patience most of us will never understand. I left those woods physically intact, but I carry pieces of them. Still shadows linger in my peripheral vision. Footsteps echo in empty rooms. And sometimes, when it's quiet enough, I swear I can hear the faintest whisper, calling me back. Some of the stories here were survivable, others not so much. And the truth is, you don't need to be in these woods to encounter their fear. Sometimes, it's enough to know the stories exist and to wonder which one might find you first. So tell me, which story scared you the most? Which one do you think you could survive? Because while the cycle of tales ends here, the woods and their secrets are far from finished. We've wandered through dark trails, stumbled upon shadows that shouldn't exist, and glimpsed horrors that most people never imagine. From strange strangers to creatures lurking beyond the firelight, from the madness of being lost to rituals that chill the soul, every story shares one truth. The middle of nowhere isn't empty. It's alive. It watches. It remembers it, and in ways we can't always understand. It responds. What's terrifying isn't just what you see, it's what you can't. The eyes you think you glimpsed in the trees, the whispering when the wind is still, the sense that something just beyond your vision is aware of you. These woods don't discriminate. They don't care who you are or why you're there. They only care that you notice and that you survive. If you can, I want to hear from you. Have you felt that brush of unseen attention while hiking alone? Did you ever see a shadow move in ways that didn't make sense? Or hear a whisper when no one was around? Share your experiences in the comments, and maybe, just maybe, we'll uncover truths about the woods that even I haven't dared to explore. Theories, reflections, or warnings, you name it. Every story adds to the mosaic of fear these forests carry. If you want to walk further down this path, to uncover more hidden horrors lurking beyond the reach of ordinary life, subscribe and join the journey. Share this with someone who dares. And remember, some stories don't end when the video does. They keep walking with you, lingering in corners, rustling through leaves, whispering your name when you least expect it. So, when you leave tonight, when the street lights blur into darkness, when the quiet of your home feels too still, remember this: the woods are always waiting, always watching. And some things that should remain unsolved are just waiting for the next wanderer foolish enough or brave enough to find them. Sleep well if you can.